from the moment you first felt that art form calling you to the time you actually found a group of artists to collaborate or to learn from, what was the difference in that experience? When by yourself in a silo, like Shanika said, you're kind of by yourself, or out there with a group of other artists who can. What was that like, and what's the difference? And we'll start from this end and work our way back that way.
Sure. It's really interesting because there's valuable things to be doing in either position. Emotionally, it's very different. It can feel really isolating when you're working on your own, and it can affect the way that time feels. I feel like a very, very long time is passing, and it's easier to question yourself when you don't have a group of collaborators or allies or peers that are right at your fingertips to be able to say, hey, can you come look at this? Can you come watch this piece? It also can be very insecure because you're not sure about sharing your work. I spent a lot of time going to other people's shows and being in the audience and being willing to just talk to people and having to kind of get over the social phobia that is like, oh, artists who I think of as being really good and established are not going to want to talk to me. You know, they're going to be like, who are you? Like, move along. There's more fame behind you. And that's just not the case. You know, everybody is excited to talk to someone who has a thoughtful dialogue, you know, who wants to know about your work. Most people want to talk about their work, and most people want to support you, is what I found out from being in a solo position for a long time, for a very long time. The ways that shifted are then, you know, the opposite of that, where it was really beautiful to have a community and have a lot of resources. Dance is really ephemeral, and one of the things you need is a lot of space to create. And having a community really helps to share resources and to share spaces, and just inspirationally too, having the chance to have a lot of options and resources right at your fingertips for ideas, and to know that you can call somebody up and say, oh, let's have coffee and let's talk about a show, or let's talk about a piece. And just having a lot of opportunities to say yes is really nice. Having a lot of offers can feel really good.
Okay, so I'm going to pull a little bit more.
Yeah.
The courage. What was that step, and how did you feel, and what was the questions you asked when you felt that you were ready to talk to someone, and how did you go about that? Where did you find them, besides going to their events?
Sure. I got really good at going to things alone. And I really recommend that, not to say that you can't ever take a friend, but it feels really comforting to have somebody else there with you. One, if you're really passionate and excited about something, and I was just really a nerd for dance and wanted to like look at every dancing person ever. There were not that many people that I could call upon who wanted to see as much dance as I wanted to see. So part of it was practical. I did have to go alone, but I think that afforded me the opportunity to be, if I could just get past, you know, feeling super self-conscious for like wandering around, looking at work by myself with my drink, you know, and realizing that it wasn't strange for anyone else to see me alone, as strange as it felt to be alone. It did afford me more opportunities to go up and talk to people, and it was just seeking out opportunities for discussion, really, and being willing to give yourself the credit that your opinion is valuable and that your desire is to be new. It's okay to be new at something. Yeah. And that's something I still tell myself on a regular basis, is that it's like, it is completely legit to be new at anything. You know, you might be super experienced over here. And I think in some ways that's why it took me until, you know, I was 35 when I started dancing. It took me 35 years to just become courageous in a lot of ways, just to show up. Yeah. Because showing up was one of the biggest part of it. Showing up in a conversation, showing up to open my mouth and say something, really anything that made sense, was 90% of the work.
Yeah.
After that, it actually became much easier. It was getting to that point to where I would actually go to the event. I would stick around, you know, I would go and see like, oh, whose work is this? Oh, there's the person. Okay, hi. What's up? It's cool. You know, and then even just the repetition of being seen at places and for the first time being really strange paid off. It's not bad to stand out a little bit. It's been a little bit of a tough ride, but being strange finally worked out a little. We'll see how it goes.
Okay. Shaniqua? Same thing.
Same question.
Yes, working on your own, working alone, thinking about this, and then how did you seek out, how did you find this person you mentioned earlier? And what was that feeling like? What was the interaction like to get you going?
Well, I'll say for me, or from what I found with other artists, I'm naturally a recluse. So I naturally want to do my work by myself in my own space, alone. You know, I'm the person who, you know, I've been like that since I was a kid. I go in my room, close the door, and I'm in my magical land. And, you know, trying to come off a fantasy island is difficult. And so, to come outside of that's courageous, to come outside of your comfort zone, what you're used to doing. For me, that was a little difficult. Because, you know, when you start engaging with other artists have opinions. They want to tell you what you should or should not do. Because, you know, when you're in your own space, you think everything you do is dope. That's hot. you think it's just you think it's the cream, and then when
until the next morning,
or, you know, until you sober up or whatever, you know, what have you. And so, you know, when you start to engage and you introduce your work to other artists, they're like, that's some crap. But you need to hear that. You need to hear that, right? You need to hear, you could do something different. You need to hear, you need to throw that away. You need to hear, maybe you should start over, do over. You need to hear that. And so to get that from other artists, you know, whether it was from Doyle or somebody else, you know, especially like when you're interacting on social media. And so, like, when I would put stuff up on Facebook, you know, I have all these likes. I have, you know, all these likes. The likes mean something, don't they? But then I have an artist who was a friend who would inbox me and say, you need to take that down. Take that down. That's not as hot as you think it is. But they're saying it, one, to protect you. They're saying it, one, because you can do better. They're saying it, one, because somebody might copy that. They're saying, you know what I'm saying? So it's just, it varies. It differentiates. I think some of my difficulty and I guess kind of engaging in certain arenas, and I think that's just from me coming from a female or a male perspective, is in my career in the art field, or most fields, is male dominated, right? And so unless I can't even say unless you're a housewife, because even that's male dominated now. Depend on who you talk to. And so for me, I just recall being in a space of trying to grow beyond where I was. And so trying to seek out other artists to be my mentor, to help me grow in certain areas. And when I was seeking them out, while they were helping me, they were also hitting on me. And so that made it difficult for me to grow, to move beyond where I was. And so for me, I'm like, I'm not gonna stay stuck, and I'm not gonna sleep with you. So, I don't want to have that catch-22. I'm not gonna, question my morals or my values in order to get to where I'm trying to go. So that made me go back to school. I started back at SCAD probably about 3 or 4 years ago. I got accepted into SCAD probably my senior year in high school, but I didn't want to go. I didn't know that was too far away. Too far away from my mama and all this other stuff, but I went back to SCAD because I needed to grow. I didn't like the position that I was in because I wanted to grow as an artist, and so I returned to school. And so being able to talk to professors who were not interested in me, they were only interested in my work, to talk to other fellow students who were interested in my craft or who did different things than I did, that helped me to blossom, and well beyond anything I could ever expect. So in regards to getting outside of it, and I'm not saying that that's what's good for everybody else. I'm saying that was my experience, and that's what I chose to do. And so in developing and growing with other artists and getting other people's opinions, it takes courage to accept what they have to say, to accept critiques. I don't like critiques because I think everything I do is perfection. Everything I do is wonderful in your mind, right? In my mind, everything I do is wonderful. What are they talking about? But it has helped me to develop. It has helped me to grow as an artist, and that's what's most important to me. So from the time that I was born to whenever I leave this earth, I don't want to be the same person I was last year. I better not be. I better not be. You should want to grow. You should want to go beyond. And so having a group of people around you, whomever that is, to help you grow, that definitely has expanded me far beyond measure.
Awesome.
Yeah. Still thinking of your criticism. You're talking about criticism. When I decided to be an art major as an undergraduate, I went back and forth because I had a lot of interest, and I wasn't so. I think I'm wonderful. I was like, and I finally went back into art. But at that time, I didn't have any women professors. And the mode of criticism was the guy professors who were old abstract expressionists wannabes, and they were very clear on what you could do. You could not paint the human form. That was retro. You could not have subject matter in your work. It all had to be. I didn't know at that point that this all goes in fashion. It's all, and one of them in particular just didn't feel like he was much of a teacher unless he made the students cry. Mostly the girls, of course. So, I learned some things. I learned how to do abstract expressionist paintings, which was not what my inclination was for, but I did it, and I graduated, and I had a life, and blah, blah. And I had a baby, all that stuff. That went in life. And while I was being a young mom, I was living in San Francisco, and in the early 70s, and I found out about the women's art movement, and I read a lot. And it changed my work, or somewhat. But then I didn't really know. I didn't have any real friends to talk to about until I moved to North Carolina, and saw an ad in a publication that there was going to be a meeting of this. That somebody was interested in starting a women's group of women artists to talk about the stuff that's going on, and I showed up, and I didn't know anybody, and I was scared to death, and I hung out with these people for probably 2 years before I said much, but eventually, the group, and I got to be just about every position in the group, and I learned to talk, and I learned more from the other artists in that group about the nitty-gritty of how to take images of your work, how to write a resume, and just all this basic stuff that they didn't teach you in school. But I had these women who were slightly older than me who were mentored me and showed me how to do things, and I got to be in shows. They invited me, and I learned to talk. Not very, So that was finding that group of women. Then just changed everything. I finally, again, you want to keep growing, right? And I always thought probably I should get a graduate degree. And at the tender age of 40, I went back and went to grad school, and it had changed a little bit, but not much. But my work changed, and having somebody, I think, to look at your work and talk to you about it without telling you how awful and terrible and full of shit, and you can't do that anymore. I couldn't handle that kind of that was too much like these teachers. But these were people who could point out things that maybe you could do better without, making you feel like you've been destroying your soul. Yeah, exactly. I'm sorry. I think being an artist of whatever kind is, you're being naked in public. And my artwork is me. I mean, it's my, here's my body. It's not my body that's out there because I decided not to be that kind of an actor. I did the performance art thing once, your work comes from you, from what's deepest within you, and it's different from everybody. And I don't think you can just say that shit because it doesn't agree with what I think is good art. But people in academia are very fond of telling you what is and what isn't good.
What can we focus on if we're an introvert? We're the kind of person that is really holds things close to us, and